are looking at road entry point management systems and their effects or implications on regional integration and development, economic development in Africa. What we are bringing in today is the intersectionality between the African values, the existing values, and road entry point management systems, where we are saying, how can we use our African ways of knowing or of doing things to better the movement of people and goods across road entry points in Africa? Let's redefine state sovereignty. Let's revisit on our borders. Do we need them? And to serve what purpose exactly? Yes, we might say we need them, but what purpose are they serving? I think the role of academics does not change. We talk about research. But the practitioners now, I would say, we want to walk the talk. They should implement. A lot of research has come through, a lot of recommendations are already there on paper, but we want to see them implementing. We are looking at the road entry point management systems. What is obtaining on the ground? What problems do we have, are we experiencing, maybe due to the ways in which we are managing our road entry point management systems? We are looking at the way immigration processes are handled at our territorial borders in Africa. So there we have, how can SADC regional governance facilitate seamless national borders that have advanced free movement of people and whatever. Then we have, what is the role of the African epistemologies, like she was talking about earlier. So we are saying these are the regional governance problems that we have. Obviously, we have more, but we have identified these. We have state sovereignty problems, where we are saying state sovereignty in Africa has been elevated to an extent that is now the concentration of all. That's what we are concentrating on protecting the state sovereignty. We are maybe trapped in the traditional conception of security and ignoring now the emerging, which are the more prominent security issues that are coming and that are affecting Africa. We can talk of health issues, we can talk of issues to do with job security and other problems. Why are we so much concentrating on state sovereignty? These are the governance problems that we are seeing. Then we also have issues to do with universalism, where we are saying Africa, maybe some of the problems that we are having is because we are following universal standards. She was talking about Africa getting and trying to follow the westernized way of doing things, the universal way of doing things. But is that what is proper for Africa? The universal way of doing things, we are saying, yeah, maybe it's one of the problems that we are having. Then we will have the overlapping regional memberships is another problem, where we are finding African countries in multiple regional groupings. What are we doing in these regional groupings besides contradicting ourselves and creating legal problems on implementation? Those are some of the challenges that we have. Then that was the research methodology. I will not take you through that, but yeah, we had literature review, in-depth interviews, surveys, and all that. So what we established now, we have relationships that we established, the relationships that exist between the road entry point management systems, non-tariff barriers, and regional governance, where the research findings indicate, among other things, that there exists a positive correlation between road entry point management systems and non-tariff barriers, which means that the performance of non-tariff barriers and road entry point management systems improve or decline with each other. Then there are findings from the secondary data which show that the problems are not new, and there is evidence that Africa has failed SADC especially has failed to totally integrate like we would wish to see, despite the policies, the calls, and everything that has been put in place. Then there is also evidence from research that shows that maybe it's not the problem of the entry point management systems that we are using, but maybe it's the problem of the sincerity which goes to governance issues, what we do about the systems that we have in place. Sometimes we have very good systems. Why we are talking about this, you find that our research looked at the one-stop border post system that is being used in Chirundu, Zimbabwe, between Zimbabwe and Zambia. Then we looked at the two-stop borders post systems. We have the Zimbabwe-South Africa border, Zimbabwe-Mozambique. We have the Zimbabwe-Botswana borders that were coming in. You will find that we established in our research that we had hoped that at one-stop border post systems, the movement of people and goods was going to be smooth. But on the contrary, if you go there, you find that it's not that smooth. Why is it not that smooth? You will find that the people who man the borders there, they are not sincere. Even though it's a one-stop border post system, they still operate as a two-stop border system, where some processes that are not supposed to be duplicated and repeated are still being repeated and duplicated at the Chirundu one-stop border post system, and so forth. Then we have these as the factors that are affecting regional integration in SADC. I hope we will weave through and understand where we are linking these things together. These are the factors here. We have pessimistic state attitudes, intrastate peace deficiency, traditional perceptions of security. We talked about the state sovereignty issue, the terrorism threat to peace, then divergent patterns of industrialization, inadequacy in complementarities, then policies that restrict, restricting regulatory policies, then a plethora of regional arrangements, neocolonialism, etc. Then we have that supporting data. I'm not going to take you through that, but we had all those hyperlinked attachments to show the effects of NTBs and the like. So that's part of the data that we have on the road entry point management systems and the prevailing non-tariff barrier relationship. Those were the responses now from our qualitative data. So that was part of our thematic analysis, where we are saying these are the responses that came from the cases that we had, the nature of the relationship. We have positive appearing there on case A, positive relationship, where we are saying road entry point management systems affect the movement of goods and people. Then we have case B, the themes that are coming there. We have integration promotes movement of goods. Then under case C, we have positive relationship, integrated systems will smoothen movement of goods. Then we have responses for the procedural NTBs, non-tariff barriers on the one-stop border post. Then we have infrastructural non-tariff barriers on the one-stop border posts as well. So the main responses that we have, we had that there were issues to do with low manpower, absence of sound legal framework, absence of strong commitment to ethical practices, insincerity towards harmonization, inadequate skilled manpower. Then on infrastructure, you find that they were talking about what incompatibility of systems, where we are saying the systems that are in place, the soft and the hard infrastructure are not compatible at the entry points. Then under case B, they are talking about the same, the hard infrastructure not informed by the soft infrastructure. Then the one-stop border post not being implemented in most border posts, even though they were proposed along the most corridors in Africa. So what are we saying? We are saying we want to infuse African ways of knowing, into regional governance and cross-border activities. We are looking at the recommendations that we want to give. She presented the part on the African ways of knowing. I presented what is obtaining on the ground on road entry point management systems. Why are we talking about road entry point management systems? I'm sure you were picking, like I was doing from the earlier presentations. Piri talked about what the problems that we have in the definition of illegal immigrants and the challenges of reintegration of the immigrants into the society. Then Satang was talking about what the Gambians having difficulties when crossing borders. Then Nyasha talked about what intra-African migration being more than external migration. Then Prof. Karim lamented on the what replicating and the absence of cooperation, lack of coordination between agencies and the like. Then Prof. Campbell talked about what rejuvenation of African ideas, talked about the transboundary issues, how African boundaries do not belong to Africa. You will find that this is what we are talking about. The problems that they were identifying are the problems that we are talking about. The challenges that we have in road entry point management systems, we are saying these are the reasons why we have problems about illegal immigrants. It's because of the way we manage our entry points. How does someone become an illegal immigrant? It's because they cannot fulfill the requirements at the entry points. But why do we need these requirements? Where did the borders come from and the like? So we want to say, we want to redirect, to see a redirection of the state's energy from fulfilling external actors' dictates to discovering and focusing on African ways relevant to African problems. She talked about that. We want to apply African values by harmonizing and synchronizing road entry point management systems to practice state independence and regional interdependence simultaneously. Here we are saying you will find that the entry points management systems that we have in Africa, they don't speak to each other. They are not synchronized. Why is it you find one border using Ascuda whatever, the other using maybe Ascuda the latest version? Then change of perceptions, we want to see the change of perceptions. Then rather than following the universal practices like we indicated earlier, we want to conduct research that provide customized solutions that are relevant to our African setup. Then we want to redefine the meaning of territorial borders, citizenship, and the like in Africa, so that we eliminate the problems that we have on entry point management systems and a whole lot of other problems now that we start to talk about in Africa, about illegal movements, about economic issues that emanate from how we manage the movement of people across entry points. And why we are saying that, we are saying most of the people move on the ground, through road entry points across Africa. Thank you. I'm Dr. Zimano. I'm attached to Midland State University and Great Zimbabwe University in Zimbabwe on part-time basis. So my research is coming out of my doctoral thesis. That's what I'm presenting now. We are looking at road entry point management systems and their effects or implications on regional integration and development, economic development in Africa. What we are bringing in today is the intersectionality between the African values, the existing values, and road entry point management systems, where we are saying, how can we use our African ways of knowing or of doing things to better the movement of people and goods across road entry points in Africa? Why are we talking about that? We are realizing that most of the movements in Africa is by road. So the problems that we have about immigrants, illegal immigrants, that will, at the end of the day, also affect the status of our immigrants in Africa. Most of them emanates from how we control our entry points. Sometimes you will see one country categorizing people differently from the other country, and we don't have what sort of harmonization of standards and so forth. So what we are bringing now to this conference are more of recommendations where we are saying, let's redefine state sovereignty. Let's have a revisit on our borders. Do we need them? And to serve what purpose exactly? Yes, we might say we need them, but what purpose are they serving? Then we also need to refocus our concentration. We are concentrating on borders and the traditional concept of security. But are these the threats that we have now in Africa? You will find maybe we have more of internal threats that are coming now from the illegal immigrants. So we might be the ones who are creating the problems by the way we are managing our entry points. So that's my story. I think in order for us to promote and encourage good governance, we have to nurture it. Because from my perspective, I see the problem is we have two groups of people. We have the leaders and the people. When we have the leaders now who know good governance and they are sincere about following the good governance, sometimes you find the people are not sincere about it. Then we have a situation sometimes when we have people who are sincere about good governance and the leaders who are not sincere. So we need to marry these two groups. Then we nurture the idea and the ideals of good governance for both the leadership and the people, so that we have something in common from the leadership to the people. Because for good governance to prevail now, we need leadership and support. So both sides, we have to nurture good governance in both sides, the leadership and the people. I think the role of academics does not change. We talk about research. Yes. But the practitioners now, I would say, we want to walk the talk. They should implement. A lot of research has come through, a lot of recommendations are already there on paper, but we want to see them implementing. They talk about it, they will be doing it, that's what they promise us, but on the ground, they don't. So what I want to see maybe as the role of the practitioners now is walking the talk. The implementation part, I think, is what is lacking.